Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Austin Reed, founder of Horizon Dev, a software development agency specializing in legacy platform modernization and automation. So we'll learn from him about what it really takes to modernize enterprise software, building software, remote teams, automation, and using AI in production systems and much more. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Thank you so much for having me today.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Austin. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about tech resilience, we'll talk about legacy tech, and we'll talk about building an agency from scratch that you have done, and much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Absolutely. What did you want to know?
Wherever it works for you, from where you learned the most.
From where I learned the most, I'd say by making a ton of mistakes, man. Honestly, like I never had a formal education, right? So, I mean, I did go to university, but I dropped out and I went for music. But in terms of programming and computer science, I never had a formal education in that. So I learned by doing. So I needed it by necessity. So I learned Python back when I was doing drop shipping. It's like 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. It's a while ago. And I had so many orders that I couldn't handle them. So I made a Python program that would handle my orders and fulfillment for me. Shipping products from AliExpress, DHgate to Amazon to eBay, things like that. And then one of my mentors saw what I did and thought it was really cool, and he wanted me to do the same thing for him. And so that was like my first production code. But in hindsight, I had no idea what I was doing. I was a beginner, and it just took a lot of mistakes and time and projects to really get to where I am today.
Absolutely. So you didn't have a formal education. So how did you get whatever you needed to build what you built later on? Was it sleeping on the streets? If my audience wants to understand, what was it like then? Help us understand with that sort of a life. And how did you think of this sort of a life from that point in view?
Okay, so what he's referring to is when I was in the Amazon River, I took a boat from Ecuador to Brazil, and in the middle of the trip, we ran out of money, and I had to sleep on the street for about a week in Brazil. And at that time, I wasn't thinking about this at all. I had no idea that any of this would happen, honestly. I feel like I'm quite fortunate. At that time, I was working on music. I was a full-time musician. And there was definitely a lot of ups and downs. Like the highs, I would do maybe $3,000 a month. And on the lows, as you can see, I was sleeping on the street. That only happened once, thank God, right? But it did happen. And then I lost my income several times in the middle of there, and it was just really inconsistent, right? And so I think the thing that really helped me the most was resilience, right? I just never gave up. There was never a time in my mind where I was like, oh, I'm just going to go back to the corporate world and go get a job or something like that. I just would always try to figure it out. Even when I didn't have income, I always was able to look around me and find something to sell, or use one of my skills and leverage that to do a service for somebody or something. So I was always able to kind of figure it out, even when I was in those difficult situations.
Absolutely. So when did this whole idea of building a company happen? Did it just you planned for it, or it just came and you started building towards this, and then you worked on this? You were building up the legacy system for others. You talk about the aircraft and the aviation side of things.
Yeah, man. So started this company by accident. I didn't intend to start a software company. I wasn't even really that into software at the time. One of my friends who I met in Brazil on that same trip, he got robbed at gunpoint and got his laptop and some money stolen and stuff. And so this was in the middle of COVID. I had already left Brazil. I was in Indonesia at the time. And he was just texting me and he was complaining. He was really upset about what happened. And I told him, I'm like, hey man, I have an idea. Why don't I sell a website and we can both program it and split the money? Because he has a master's in cybersecurity, right? So I was like, hey, that's a really good idea to do. And so I did. I spent about a week, I think, like 10 days, something like that. And we sold our first WordPress website for $700. I probably should charge a lot more for the project, looking in hindsight, but it is what it is. And then I sold another one, and we did like 2 or 3. And then he was like, "Yo, I'm gonna quit my job and just do this." And I was like, "Dude, like now I'm responsible for this guy. Like if I don't sell websites, then he doesn't eat." And especially since he was one of my friends, that's a big deal. That's a big responsibility. So that's kind of how we started. And then, took us like a year and a half to finally start hiring people. And then, the first couple hires we did were not very good hires. Also, we didn't really know how to manage. So it was partly our fault as well, and we just kept learning and learning. And that's kind of how Horizon got started. Now we work more on legacy platforms, as you mentioned. The idea is to find platforms that, were built, 5, 7, 10 years ago or more, that are built on outdated code structures or outdated practices, or just not built well in the beginning at all. So you can imagine like an MVP product that got launched, and then they want to launch it quickly, right? So they cut some corners, and then they just never fixed it. And so the foundation of the SaaS, the foundation of the house, right, is fundamentally wrong. And so when you go to build on new features and do new things, you try to add one thing over here, and this breaks because of the way it was built. It wasn't built the right way. And so we take platforms like that and we modernize them. We put in automations, we add new features, we fix the foundation fundamentally, right? We add AI layers into it and help those businesses get into a position to where they can grow, create new features, get feedback quickly from their customers, and able to increase LTV, upsells, and ultimately increase user base throughout the platforms.
Absolutely, Austin. So what is the main offering, your topmost offering as an agency?
Well, it would be that. It would be modernizing the legacy platforms. Generally speaking, that's different for every platform, right? Because every platform is not the same, So it's not like we have a packaged offer. We do have a minimum. Our minimum is $8,000 a month, right? But outside of that, I mean, that can scale up really quickly. It could scale up to $50,000 a month, depending on how big the platform is. If we're working for like a government agency, or if we're working for, a multinational corporation, as opposed to just working for, a smaller like 10-man team type of platform. It can really vary 100%.
Absolutely. Why did that company choose you? Is it because you were available, or you were the best?
I think a little bit of both. At first, they chose me because we were available, right? And so we jumped in as just a normal engineer, right? And so I was actually working on their platform myself. And so I was coding, and The platform was just fighting against me because it was a legacy platform built like crap, right? And so I just kind of told them the truth. I'm like, hey, I can keep doing this, but your platform has an expiration date because of the way it was built and things like that. And they had some internal politics with the head of engineering as well, and so at that time they got rid of him. And they just asked me like what I felt about the system, and I told them, and they gave me leeway to rebuild the system. So we spent about like 14, 15 months rebuilding the system, right? And in that time, they allowed me to hire subcontractors and stuff. So I was able to operate as a company again and not just me programming it. And then we launched and we got 67% revenue growth for them within the first year after launch. And so it was really, really big deal for them. Now they're doing really well. We're able to launch features quickly. LTV went up. A lot of people, like, they didn't even realize what the pro service offered on their platform, right? And now that we rebuilt the system, almost everybody's on pro because they realize the difference between the two and they really want access to that information. So there's a lot of things that we streamlined. We streamlined the buying process. We streamlined a lot, and it was able to produce a huge growth for the company.
Absolutely. So, what did you learn from that whole process? And what is the best thing that my audience can learn from you, Austin, as an expert?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I would say hire faster. We should have hired our first year. But from that platform specifically, we learned a lot about maintaining a legacy platform, which was really difficult. And we learned a lot about the importance of maintaining code to begin with. So whenever a new update comes out, don't just jump on the new update and update your app immediately, because there's oftentimes in new versions of Node or Django or whatever, there are vulnerabilities that come out a couple of months later. But once an update to a programming language is more widely adopted, which is usually 6 to 9 months after the update comes out, you do want to go through the platform and you want to start updating and changing these things as general maintenance, right? It's like having a house. You know what I'm saying? If you have a house and a pipe breaks and you're just like, oh, I'm not going to fix that now, and then you wait, then eventually it's going to be a really big problem for your house, because you're going to have water in the walls and the walls are going to break and things like that. And at that point, instead of just fixing a pipe, you have to fix the wall, you have to fix a pipe, you have to replace the ceiling, you have to do a bunch of work, right? And that's exactly the same with these software platforms. A lot of software platform owners built it on one version of code and then just leave it like that. And that's cool. But like, as we advance, as technology advances, you have to keep upkeeping these softwares. And so that was a huge lesson for us, because keeping VREF online for so long was a very, very difficult task.
Right, right. Now, with AI everywhere in almost everything, how do you keep up, being somebody who will be sought for your expertise? Because things changing very, very fast, and the needs of customers are also changing, and there is a lot of competition in the market in terms of deliverability and being available for also uh, for the clients. How do you maintain your uh, efficacy as well as usefulness or USP in today's time?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is YouTube, believe it or not, because we have a YouTube channel where we teach other business owners and people how to integrate AI and how to automate parts of their business using low code and no code tools and using AI. And because of that, I have a really tight community around me that's always showing me new things. And so I'm able to see when a technology comes out way before other people just because I have that community around me. And so that gives me the opportunity to play with these AIs a little bit and get familiar with them and understand the advantages and disadvantages of each, so that when we do go into a business aspect and we have a client who needs an integration or something like that, we already know what tools to use because I've been playing with them, I've been talking about them, I've been using them for a while. Whenever a new technology comes out, I will jump on it and learn about it. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that, right? Because I have a team that handles the fulfillment and they're all experts at what they do. I think that's the number one thing. Outside of that, the results that we get for our clients is quite remarkable and it speaks for itself. So just by having the reputation that we do, that we have been fortunate to build up over this time, means that whenever we do interact with a client, they take us quite seriously because we've done a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Handling several clients from, from a place in Argentina and remotely, how does that work in terms of vis-a-vis being a digital nomad, as well as, managing teams, as well as managing clients' expectations? How do you manage all that, Austin?
Yeah, so it's a lot easier than you think. Almost everybody nowadays, they meet up with Zoom or Meet or, they meet up online in some way. And so they don't expect you, especially in the tech world, to be coming into work, as you could say. So it actually ends up being quite easy. At least managing the clients wise, it's just a Zoom call. You just do a Zoom call maybe once a week or whenever you have a new feature to deliver, something like that. And that keeps the clients, informed and that's good enough. People ever since COVID are very conditioned and accustomed to using these methods of delivery and communication. Right. In terms of managing a team, that's a little bit different. The biggest thing is making sure that you match certain cultures, understanding that certain countries have certain culture tendencies, right? And so, like, for example, a lot of people know this, the Philippines, right? They're really, really good at communication. And because they're good at communication, that means they're really good at customer service. They're really good at sales type roles. They're really good at these types of roles, right? And so understanding that if I was to look for a role like that, I would oftentimes look in the Philippines, right? And so finding countries that have these tendencies and mixing and matching them together really helps. The other thing is our dev team is in Africa. And that's amazing because they get 4 hours of work done before I wake up. You know what I'm saying? And so when I do wake up, I can influence the last 4 hours of their work. And then throughout the day, as things happen, I can take whatever pending items are needed for the clients. I can load them up in the GitHub dashboard. And then the next day when I wake up, they're already done, right? And then we still have time for changes. Whereas if we worked with a country like India, which is totally fine, they work oftentimes during our nighttime, right? Not always. Some of them will stay up all night, which I don't necessarily condone because that makes life uncomfortable for people, right? But if they do, that's their own choice. But the thing is that's great, but it's hard to overlap communication there. So whereas I have 4 hours where I can request feedback, make calls with developers, do changes and stuff, if I was to work with a country like India, those 4 hours overlap wouldn't be there, right? So, I mean, that's still great because you can still communicate asynchronously using Loom and using dashboards and stuff. But for my work style, that wouldn't work very well.
Absolutely. Who is your ideal client, Austin?
Yeah, my ideal client is legacy platforms, legacy data platforms to be specific, that are looking to evolve in their industry, right? So VREF is a really good example of that because, they're a legacy data platform with aircraft. They have information about aircraft going all the way back to the 80s, right? And people use that information to evaluate aircraft. So they're sitting on a big amount of data. There's a lot of things to be added there. There's AI predictive models to add whereby we predict the price of aircraft over the next 5-10 years, right? And just the system itself needs an overhaul, right? Any company that's doing data entry manually or generating reports manually in some way could benefit from our services.
Wonderful. There is so much to learn about all this from you, Austin. And I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of companies would want to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do so?
Absolutely. So you guys can go to horizon.dev. There's our website. We have case studies there. And if you like, at the bottom, we have a link to our YouTube where we show over 100,000 people a month how to integrate automation and AI within their own businesses.
Wonderful. With this, it's set up on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.